Football has its ups and downs. You can't win every match, but you can win every bet. Start your free trial and earn £30 risk-free today at oddswatchdog.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to the Gooner Ramble podcast. I'm your host Giles, and joining me tonight are the irreverable. I'm going to make that word up. I don't even know what it means. I don't even know what I was trying to say, but the irreverable Akil. How you doing, mate?
Well,
you all right?
You've used a word to describe me that you don't know what it means. You know I don't know what it means. So at the moment, you could have called me an absolute something, or you could have complimented me. I don't know. But anyway, I am here.
Good man. And joining us is special guest Sophie. What's your Twitter handle for those that don't know, Sophie?
Soccer Diva.
Soccer Diva. If you don't know, she's been stranded out in LA for a good 16 years now. She's trying to find a way back to London, but the sun's holding her hostage out there. How are things today over in LA?
They're cloudy with a chance of meatballs, actually, today. It's very unlike California. It's a bit more like England today, a bit grey, but I can't complain. And yeah, so thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Like following Giles, this is our first encounter, but Akil I've followed for a number of years now on Twitter and love his thought process. And so thanks for having me on.
Someone's got to love it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm glad someone does. Because
I'm here
whatever it was.
All right, let's get into it. Ax, you were there at the game yesterday. Quick summary from you.
Yeah, not much really happened. It was very cold. First half was... again, not really much happened. There was probably a chance each. You'd probably say Leicester had the better chance with Mahrez, which was a good reaction save from Czech. Walcott kind of dribbled his way in, but the shot was a little bit tame, but he done well to kind of get into the position. A couple of shots from outside the area, and then second half was probably mostly Arsenal. We certainly created a little bit, but we certainly were slow and we were a little bit sluggish, and it was a typical sort of hangover from a big semi-final, really. And it was just important to get the goal, and win the game. I don't think Leicester were going to score. It looked like it would be a 0-0 rather than a 1-0 to Leicester. So we got the goal. That was great. I think the only bit I was concerned about was when Lauren Koscielny went down. He looked in real trouble. He came on because we didn't maybe have a sub. The Evening Standard tonight reported that he could be a doubt for the derby. But let's hope he's okay, and let's hope he plays on Sunday because we need him.
Sophie, over to you. As Ax said, there really didn't seem like a lot to be said about the game. I mean, do you think the personnel were affected by by Sunday's extra time win and the exertions from that? I mean, I know Wenger made a few changes, but it seemed to be a lot of possession without penetration again. We kind of struggled to really get anything going in attack, and thankfully, fortuitously, it was Nacho's endeavours that inadvertently got us the goal. I mean, how did you see the game?
I think, for the last few weeks, we've been looking for performance as well as results. I think this was the type of game where the result was so much more important than the performance. I think it's expected after a draining game at the weekend to come out of that, not only physically and playing extra time, but mentally for Arsenal, mentally for the team, for Wenger, that was huge. They put everything into that game. One of our best performances, so far this season. Yes, we got a little bit lucky in that semi-final as well, but man, we've not had any luck this season. And so finally we rode a little luck and we performed really well. One of our best defensive performances. So coming into the Leicester game, I just wanted to get 3 points. I really couldn't care how we played in that game because between now and the end of the season, it's about results, performances, as long as they put in the guts part that they've been doing more so over the last few weeks. I'd be happy with that. It wasn't a pretty game, but Leicester aren't a pretty team. They've been pretty awful this season. And I think when you play a team like Leicester, you really just need to put like your bulletproof vest on, get 3 points and get out. And I felt like we did that, really well in that game. It was the result that counted.
Sticking with you, Sophie, Wenger obviously has gone with the 3-man defence for the last few games, and that's made us much more defensively solid. However, we've not really been that potent in attack, and it's something that a lot of people noticed last night, that he said that he decided to bring on more attackers and go 4 at the back to get that sort of attacking potency. Do you think there's still some teething problems and some issues to be ironed out in terms of getting defence and attack right in this new 3-man, 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1 formation that he's devised for the team?
Yeah. In a game environment, I think yes. Football players should be able to adapt. And I think one of the key things here is that we're seeing something that a lot of us have screamed out for earlier in the season. Things aren't working, let's change it. I was talking to the 2 mics on TalkSport just last week about how we beat Chelsea 3-0 in September. This team beat Chelsea 3-0 in September. We owned them in that game. And Conte, what he did after that game was he completely went back to his Juventus and Italian tactics, the 3 at the back. They haven't looked back since. When the wheels came off for us, we didn't really respond tactically. We didn't really kind of ask the players or give the players the tools and the resources to do something differently to cause effect and change in a game. And the 3 at the back, I think, was refreshing. But I also think the key to that was mixing it up a little bit at the back and bringing in Rob Holding. I've been a massive fan of his from day one. I really loved his attitude when I met him out here in LA last year. Such a lovely lad, just so fresh and green. I mean, his comment about having never been to Wembley before, and then he finds himself playing in an FA Cup final for Arsenal against Pep Guardiola, arguably one of the best coaches we've seen in our time. And so I think there was a lot of, you have to also shift tactics, yes, but infuse some new energy into the team. And I thought that was really effective because someone like Rob Holding really wants to make a difference. He wants to show that he can, he's not really been utilized since he's come from Bolton. I was hoping he would be given a shot much earlier on when things really started going awry in defense. And so I think that energy change really worked. I think the midfield is that conduit between, making the front more effective and kind of tying in how we play from the back. And I honestly feel that is our biggest Achilles heel right now, as well as the defense. We have got attacking flair. We've got a lot of people that can score a lot of goals, and we've seen that this season. But I feel that midfield, even though, Ramsey comes in, sometimes people like the combination between Ramsey and Xhaka or Coquelin and X and Y. I just don't think that area has really been as effective. And seeing someone like the Ox flourish this year has been great. But I feel like the stagnation is that midfield and kind of how we position ourselves and how we play out from the back and really tie in the attack. And so, regardless of that, I think the 3 at the back is refreshing. I think we've got to be very careful in terms of how we play that 3 at the back against Chelsea in the FA Cup final, especially. But it was good to see Wenger take a chance and make a change. And I think that's what people have been asking for. Don't wait till 70 minutes to make a sub. Let's just, try something new. Give the players the tools and resources to cause effect and change in the game. And we've seen that in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Aki, I'd imagine you agree with a lot of what Sophie said there.
Yeah, I kind of sort of break the season down a little bit. So we obviously we played 4 at the back for pretty much the whole season, but the first kind of 2 or 3 months when we played well, it was 4. But obviously we had Santi Cazorla in there, who was that sort of transition between defence and attack. and that then, it let Mesut go sort of beyond the front man, Alexis. It made him go beyond because Santi could be that sort of playmaker. And then it obviously changed when Santi Cazorla got injured. And then I think Sophie's spot on about the midfield, actually, because I've always felt that four was often exposed, or certainly the two were exposed. The fullbacks would go up, and sometimes the midfield would just not be disciplined enough, and that then left our two really exposed. So having a three does mean you've got that extra body in there, so if you are exposed, you've got a little bit of insurance. But what's actually happened there is even the midfield now are starting to be disciplined. So it's almost like this change of formation has just had an impact on everyone. And maybe it's just refocused everyone a little bit more, because everyone's now just having to concentrate that little bit more, because a couple of them are playing in new positions, a couple of them have never played in this formation before. So they're just giving a little bit more. I feel that mentally they're just thinking, this is, we have to, we're still studying this, we're still learning this. And I think that's what's kind of getting this out of them. And I think that's been the difference. I mean, it will be interesting to see sort of next season kind of what we do with it, what we do with our midfield. If, someone like Jack Wilshere is going to come back, I think you would expect with Santi, we're probably never going to get kind of, a season or even half a season now from him. So it will be interesting to see. From the 3 games, I mean, you break those down. The Borough game was the first time we had tried it. We saw it was a little bit shaky at times. Borough, we did feel that they could get into us a little bit. But I mean, a lot of their shots were from outside the area. I think when they did get kind of in, they ran at us. And I think that was more about confidence, about nerves, about we were we hadn't won a game for a while in the league, so certainly away from home. So I think that was all about kind of just that kind of fear. Whereas I think against City, we obviously grew in confidence as the game went on. The formation looked a lot more fluid. We were comfortable. I think, like Sophie says, with sort of Wenger taking that risk, and I think playing Rob Holding was a great example. He kept him in because he thought he played well against Borough, and obviously seen him in training. Whereas yesterday, I just thought maybe at home against some teams, it's not going to be the ideal sort of formation, because it just made us a little bit more sort of defensive, maybe not as fluid offensively, because we lost that sort of extra man, because obviously, Chamberlain wasn't playing, so we actually effectively had 5 defenders there rather than the 4 plus Chamberlain. So maybe there's certain games where, it won't work, but it definitely looks like in the big games and away games, it could be a really useful tool. And I think it's great to be fluid. I think it's great that yesterday at 0-0 we could just change it around a little bit, take one off, take Kieran Gibbs off, put Gabriel right back, and suddenly we're on a 4 again, and we kind of look quite dangerous then. So I like the fact that we can maybe surprise teams a little bit, because it's the first time in years where we feel we can. So that's a positive.
Indeed. And also I think the new shape also, I mean, it allows the defenders, it means the defenders cover less space, because, in the 4, if we look back to Chelsea at Stamford Bridge and West Brom and so on and so forth, a lot of the time, as you said, our back 4 or back 2 were exposed, covering lots of spaces. Now with the back 3, there's a little more compact. There's having the left and the right side of the CBs have to cover less space. Obviously, you've got the fullbacks tucked in, playing as auxiliary midfielders. So there seems to be a lot more cohesion. We're allowing less balls between the lines, and I think against City that was really key. We didn't allow them to play between our midfield and our defence, where people like De Bruyne and those guys love to do their alchemy.
In big games we've tried things, and we have tried things, but we've never tried that. What we've tried is we've tried to drop maybe Mesut Ozil into a 3 and make him part of a 3, doing something that's not natural to him. Or we've tried to put him wide and play an extra midfielder in. Whereas here, actually, the solution seems actually just play an extra defender and actually let your Ozils, let your whoever play, because that's what they're good at. And in a way, they've got less responsibility now, certainly the 2 behind the striker. So actually, it's helped our offensive players play as well.
As much as it is with the tactics as well, it's the attitude of the players that's been key. I mean, compare the team that played against City in the semi-final of the Cup and in the last couple of games in the Premier League to the team that played Crystal Palace and West Brom. I mean, the away fans, we've never heard them kind of be negative like that before. So when it's, yes, the tactics have been key, but, put in the same
buy-in.
different tactics. Exactly. And so I do think that his willingness to change, the players bought into that, and the attitude completely shifted and changed. Something changed. Something has happened. Maybe you guys know more about it than I do, but something shifted when he showed he was willing to adapt. And that's something that we haven't seen from Wenger in quite some time. And it's what the club is supposedly asking him to do as well with this potential director of football position too, is can he adapt? Can he really change his way, his style from his approach in the transfer market to tactics week in, week out, whether it's the FA Cup, League Cup, Champions League or Premier League? And I think that has been the key, is something's happened. It's shifted, yes, with the tactics, but the players have adapted well to it and bought into what he's been trying to do in the last few weeks.
Indeed. I want to ask, before we move on to a different topic, I want to ask you guys about Alexis Sanchez. Now, I'm one of his biggest defenders, for right or for wrong, better or for worse. But I have kind of looked at him over the last few months, and his form has kind of deteriorated. He's still scored, crucial goals. Sunday in particular, scored a really crucial goal, and he pops up with the other crucial goal. But generally, his performances haven't been of the quality that we've now come to expect of him. He's very profligate. He's in possession. He's a bit hit and miss. He's not as careful. He's not as short. He's not as diligent in possession as someone like, say, a Xhaka or an Ozil. There's a high element of risk and reward with how he plays his football. I mean, we prefer to see him try those passes further up the field, but all too often we see him doing mad things in our own half of the field, which can lead us into trouble. Against Leicester, we saw the whole kind of package from him. He hit the bar with an excellent running shot. In another instance, he was through on goal. He's got his feet tied up. He missed a chance. He gave away a chance for City to go and to try and score. He had the incident with Fuchs where, a bit of play acting, even though Fuchs should have got a yellow card as well. I mean, Axe, how would you explain his performance this side of the season, like since 2017? How would you explain his performances? Do you agree? Do you understand where people are coming from when they say that he really is? Well, I don't think they're saying he's a deterrent or detrimental to the team's performance, but there's definitely seems to be an issue with his performances and how it affects the team.
Yeah, I mean, we all know there were a few issues internally around that Liverpool game. We all know that, there was a tackle on him in training that he reacted to and stormed off, and that caused issues. But actually, since then, certainly what we've seen on the field is he seems to have been a lot more integrated within the team. He seems to be getting on with everyone a little bit more. If you think about that Man City game at home when we scored the second, he was calling people to celebrate. Obviously against Borough, we saw that really extreme it seemed like a bit of an overreaction, picking Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain up, giving his shirt and just looking happy. Of course, the semi-final again, I mean, I thought it was a great shot when he scored. Every player was in that circle and it just looked a little bit more, that's that sort of united, that togetherness that Arsene Wenger often talks about. I can see a little bit of it here. So I think everyone's a bit more focused, including Alexis. I think what I found interesting is listening to. I mean, he doesn't do many interviews. So whether he doesn't do many interviews in England, he doesn't even do that many sort of back home. He's done a couple, but we get a lot of international players, someone like Mesut Ozil, who doesn't do many here, but does quite a few in Germany. So you're still getting things out of him. Whereas with Alexis, you're not, and you're sort of you're getting kind of Arsene Wenger's word on it. So what I mean by that is, obviously, start of the season, he was playing up front. He seemed to be doing well, enjoying it. We all know that Arsene Wenger in the summer thought long and hard about it, hence the sort of Jamie Vardy not being guaranteed football, because I think Wenger always thought about Alexis up front, and he did it from game one, to be fair. And then suddenly he's now been talking about, Alexis prefers it from the left, and we think he's a little bit more dangerous from the left. And there's been moments like that where it hasn't really been denied from the player's angle. And that makes me think that maybe he thought he enjoyed it up front, but actually when it started to dry up, he wanted to be more involved in the game. And as the season's kind of progressed and as we've started to, the results haven't been great, he's felt more of a pressure to then make things happen. Because what it looks like to me is every time he gets the ball, he wants to make something happen. And that's a good thing, obviously, at times. But sometimes you can just play the simple ball. Every single ball doesn't have to be a through ball that's going to, get you an assist or a goal. And I think sometimes he's a little bit torn in that he's trying to make something happen every time, and it's not happening sometimes for him. Having said that, he still scored. He scored against Borough, he scored against City. So in this sort of 3 in a row that we've won, he still scored twice. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think I feel a bit more confident that he has integrated well back in the team. So I'm hoping we'll see performances from him. I don't think the contract stuff is affecting him too much. And again, Arsene Wenger he said there's a big difference between sort of Van Persie and Sanchez and their age and their mentality a little bit. And I think what he meant by that is Alexis just wants to play football. He's probably not even thinking too much about the contract. He'll worry about it in the summer because he just wants to play football and he wants to win. So I think that's a good thing as well. So can I explain his form? Not really. I think the whole team has dipped. I think changing positions maybe and then trying to make something happen at every ball. Maybe those 3 things have a bit of a combination, and that maybe explains a little bit. But I'm still quite confident that he will get back to where we want him to be in the next kind of 7 games. I think the cup final will be a major motivation for him. It's a cup final against potentially the champions of England, or they could be the champions of England by then. So I think he's that sort of player where he wants to be on that world stage. He wants to play cup finals and wants to win league titles, and that kind of game will motivate him.
Sophie, Akil said that Wenger's put him up front at the start of the season, and then latterly he's talked about Alexis preferring to be on the left. Obviously, we know that Wenger had to coax him into being that striker that he wanted him to be. But also the flip side is that out on the left, it seems to be a bit detrimental to the game plan and what we're trying to do. I mean, sometimes people say he gets in Monreal's way. He's a bit wasteful with the ball, whereas up front, he's a lot more effective, a lot more dynamic. And when we see him up front with, say, Welbeck on the left or interchanging with Welbeck or Theo, a lot more seems to happen. A lot more good seems to come from him being up there. I mean, how have you viewed his performances in the last, since the turn of the year or recently? And do you prefer to see him up front, or do you not mind seeing him out on the left where he feels more better in himself and he can do more damage?
The thing with me and with Alexis is the benching at Liverpool caused a lot of problems. Obviously, the incident on the training pitch caused a lot of problems. And that was, if you go back and look at the results since then, we hadn't collapsed at that point. Something happened and the team broke after that. And I think that Wenger's management of that situation was misguided. I think he should have just left him at home rather than put him on the bench and then ask him to come on and try and save a game that we had already lost. I think that was putting him in a very unfair position, regardless of what had happened. He should have handled it a little bit more the way Conte did with Diego Costa when the whole China thing came to be. For me, there are certain players in the team that you just have to let them be who they are. Don't try to change them. Yes, positionally, we've changed players. Did it with Thierry Henry and didn't really look back, did we? But we allowed Thierry to be Thierry. He had an arrogance to him too. It was a lovable arrogance towards the end. It was an arrogance also that upset a few Arsenal fans. But, Alexis Sanchez is our Ronaldo. He's our Messi. He's our Lewandowski. He's our guy. He is a global superstar. And I think that sometimes, I'm not saying you have to mollycoddle certain players. You just have to allow certain players to be who they are. I've covered Copa America a lot since I've been living out here in the States. And, Alexis Sanchez, when you see him playing for Chile, and I'm sure you guys saw both of the copas that he won, he's a winner. He's a fighter.
Absolutely.
And when he doesn't have teammates that step up to the plate the same way he does, it frustrates him. He doesn't appreciate it. Regardless of who you're playing, he's going to give 100 gazillion%. And whether it's out on the left or down the middle, an effective Sanchez is also only as effective as he can be when his teammates are putting in the same effort. I thought he was lethal up front. I think he creates a totally different diversion for teams when we're on the attack and they're on the defense. He opens up different spaces because they're not quite sure. He's also a bit more unpredictable when he's up front. The way he closes down goalkeepers, the Gary Cahill incident in that Chelsea game, that's a perfect example of what Sanchez can do, that pressure that he can apply, that so-called Jurgen Klopp high-pressing game. He's able to do all of those things. So for me, I think he's only been as good as his teammates. There's only so much he can do on his own. I think some of the treatment towards him has been a little unfair with the Fuchs thing and everything. A lot of the times people want Arsenal to get a little dirtier. They want us to be a little rougher. And then when we do, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. And I kind of liked the winning ugly thing the other night. I liked every other team does it. Diego Costa, every team has, I'm not painting him as that picture, but it's okay to have a little gamesmanship every now and again. It's the modern game. It's the world that we live in. And to attack Sanchez for showing his lip on social media because of what happened with the elbow or the rolling around with the throw, I just don't think we should crush a player like him for trying to adapt in a game in terms of the flow of the game and what that game is saying, to him as a player. And I think that he's special. He's unique. He's top 5 best player in the world. We should do everything in our power to keep him, pay him. To me, he is somebody that if he leaves, find a player to fill that gap. Find a player to fill that void. It's not that easy. Absolutely not that easy. So for me, whether he's playing down the left or, up front, as long as he's effective and he's on form, he can be lethal and deadly from anywhere. I love him up front because of that pace. I love the spaces he opens up for when Ozil then plays, the creativity that allows, it was, when we don't have Santi, and that's been one of our biggest issues. We've never replaced Santi. He's one of those irreplaceable players, probably one of the most unsung heroes. So for me, someone like Sanchez becomes more valuable, and the club should do everything they can to keep him. And I love seeing him play. I look forward to seeing him play, and I don't care where he plays because he's a baller.
Your defense of him was quite emphatic. It's even more emphatic than I could ever report.
I think what's interesting as well is on Sunday when Welbeck came on, I think maybe in injury extra time, Sanchez was up front, and maybe that was more to do with Welbeck's defensive kind of attitude and defensive outlook, maybe. But, Sanchez he'll always press from that front and he'll work his bollocks off from that front. Whereas sometimes he's not quite the best at defending his fullback. And it's a slightly different way of defending, whereas we kind of notice that Ozil isn't great at tracking back, which I think he's got a lot better at, by the way. But we know that actually from the front, he does a really good job. So, and that's fine. And that's fine. So once you identify that, I think that's kind of fine as well.
Asking you to, I want to come.
He has given the ball away a lot recently. That's been the only criticism. He was wasteful with the ball yesterday. He was really wasteful, which is, unlike him. So again, like you were saying, Giles, trying a bit too much in spaces where he should just do the simple thing.
Yeah. Do you think though? I mean, do you guys see where people say he's petulant? Do you understand it as petulance, or as Sophie said, do you think it's just him? He gets so frustrated that maybe the other players aren't at the level he requires them to be at or something. I mean, Ax, what do you think? I mean, do you see what people are saying that, or you don't?
if I was him, and when I was at Barcelona, sort of surrounded by Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, and kind of not learning from them, but kind of working with them every day, seeing how Messi was the main man, seeing how the sort of the pressure always fell to Messi, seeing as he was like that leader of that team, may not have been captain, but certainly leader of that team. I think Sanchez thought that kind of inspired him, and when he moved to Arsenal, I think he kind of thought that that's now him. He can be that sort of player. And in the first season, he pretty much shared the burden with Mesut Ozil. But then, as time went on, he realised he is the main man here. And I think then that he's trying to sort of deliver with his teammates. I think sometimes he does get a bit frustrated with his teammates. And I think sometimes that can happen. But I just think he's trying to be that sort of, he wants to bring success, and he wants to be that main man, and he's seen it like with his own eyes, and he just wants that here. And I just think because we're not winning, he's just starting to get frustrated. And you think of that Burnley game when, he scored that last minute penalty, he stayed on the pitch, he was enjoying himself because the team won. And actually that day, we didn't play that well. But because we won, he didn't really care about bagging out teammates because, end of the day, we got the result. So I think he just wants to win so badly, and I think he feels he puts pressure on himself, as he does with his national team. It's exactly the same, He's got Vidal there and players like that, but I think he knows that he's the main man, and he feels the pressure of a nation there. And I think here he's just putting a lot of pressure on himself.
Well, we'll see how this one plays out to the end of the season. On the horizon is quite a big game now. We've got the North London derby. I don't know if you get the feed over there in America, Sophie, but over here they've got the gloves are off. They're calling it heavyweight week. They've got the gloves are off. I think I saw Ledley King and Thierry Henry doing their little gloves are off thing, comparing each other's teams. Who would you play in this? Who would you take from each other's team to play? Who's the favourite to win, and so on and so forth. So, Sky are trying to build it up. I don't know if you're getting the same feed over there with Fox Sports, Sophie, but over here they're slowly sort of cranking it up.
And NBC do a phenomenal job over here covering the Premier League. It's actually, I've had mates from the UK come over and talk about how some of the commentary and the studio analysis is so much more in depth than what you guys get sometimes, those sound bites on Sky Sports or BT. But it's a huge game, and they've been promoting it. And, dare I say, even though we are obviously trying to finish fourth, it's a big task. It's monumental. It's absolutely huge. We now need to rely on other teams in order for that to happen. But we also are playing a couple of those teams as we head into this final act of the season. But the pressure is not on Arsenal going into this game. The pressure is on Spurs to catch Chelsea to win the league. And the pressure Spurs are going to feel going into this game, I think, is even greater than that Chelsea game last season, where they lost their cool, their poking eyes, they showed their immaturity, and it led to their demise in terms of catching Leicester. I actually feel after the FA Cup semi-final, the team of confidence, we beat Leicester. That's all we needed to do going into this North London derby. If we were going into this North London derby, if this fixture was 2 weeks ago, I would be absolutely petrified because of it. But I think that there's something about Arsenal with Spurs, no matter how we're playing, what we're doing, they have this inferiority complex towards us. And that counts for a lot in sports before a ball has even been kicked. One of the greatest tools that Tiger Woods had was he beat players before he even teed off on the first tee. Mentally, he was already beating players, and players have actually talked about that as well. And I think that is one of Tottenham's biggest challenges. Now, have they done better against us over the last few seasons? Yes, last time they beat us, I think, was at White Hart Lane in 2015. We beat them in the League Cup after that, and the Premier League since November of 2015 to last season, we've drawn, right? So going into this game, I think that we have nothing to lose because everyone has already written Arsenal off. no expectations in some ways. And for Spurs, I think this is massive. So I actually think it's a perfect setup for us going into this match. Now, are we going to win? I don't know that. But do I fancy our chances this weekend more than I did 2 weeks ago? 100%.
Axe, to the wider public, it seems like there's no pressure, but we put pressure on ourselves in this. This is the North London derby.
Yeah.
I mean, we never go into a North London derby without feeling that no matter where the teams are in the table, how well they're doing or how well they're not doing or how badly they're doing, there's always pressure, isn't there?
I mean, Chelsea go to Everton before our game. So I think if Chelsea do win, Spurs know that they really have to. They have to win to just stay in touch. If Chelsea drop points, of course, then suddenly Spurs are maybe them. What does that do to their motivation levels? Potentially, are they more motivated because they know they've got sniff? I don't know, but what gives me encouragement in the North London derby really was last season when we were 2-1 down with 10 men, thinking, this was over. Even that the heavens opened, it was absolutely bucketing down. But Alexis Sanchez got an equaliser, and actually we played quite well with 10 men, and Aaron Ramsey had a chance at the end, and we could have actually nicked it with 10 men. So it gives me confidence that I think if there's one game, the players do know what this means. A North London derby, they do know what this means. And actually, going into the semi-final against City, I was more excited about the day, excited about going to Wembley and just thinking I'm going to have a great day with my mates. The result, I didn't expect. But going to Tottenham, I always feel that, I think these guys, they know what it means. And I just think they'll always put on a bit of a performance. They'll put in a little bit extra. And I always believe we can get a result there. And I think Sunday's no different. I mean, them sort of being out the cup, I think helps. Us being in the cup obviously helps because for confidence and Tottenham know, if they don't win and Chelsea do win, that's probably their season pretty much done. Yeah, top four will be a good achievement for them, but I think ultimately they'll be quite disappointed with just the top four because of a semi-final in the FA Cup and being 4 points behind Chelsea with 5-6 games to go, whatever it is. So I think it could do a lot of damage, and I think Sophie's spot on about that sort of mental thing. How we sometimes have it when we go to Old Trafford or when we go to Stamford Bridge, they have it when they play Arsenal, and I think that's something we don't want to lose. And hopefully Sunday will just be an opportunity for us to, you compare the games against Man City with that 3 at the back kind of thing. We look good. And I think something similar could happen against Tottenham. Because it's going to be one of those games where we do let Tottenham have a bit of the ball and we do try and counter them. And I think that suits our game in that formation. What doesn't suit our game is when teams like Leicester come and sit back and just play, sort of 10 men behind the ball with Jamie Vardy running around like a headless chicken. It doesn't suit that formation. But away to Tottenham, I think it will suit us, and I think it will be tactically, I think we'll kind of have a plan for them, and hopefully that plan works.
Do you guys see us playing 3 at the back? I'm so curious to know what you guys think.
I think we I mean, he's gone 3 at the back for the last 3 games. Why change it up now? It makes us more secure, and
100%.
Especially with their midfield, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the way that they like to play through the line, they like to play through the thirds. I mean, I've noticed that one of my theories as to why we go into the back 3 is because even though we don't concede as many shots on goal, we still were conceding better quality chances. So that means teams were getting in optimal positions in front of goal and getting off better shots rather than just pot shots from all over the place. We knew that last season Tottenham loved to take pot shots. I mean, Harry Kane would shoot from practically anywhere. Eriksen likes to do the same. There'll be a lot of that probably on Sunday. But as long as we defend our line like we did against Man City and grow into the game, I think we've got a chance. I think there's a chance there, and I think we're better off doing that, playing the system that we've now adopted.
think what's going to be interesting there, I think it's kind of a game. Often you say the games are won in central midfield, but actually I think the fullbacks here are going to be vital because it looks like Danny Rose might be back, which means they've got their two fullbacks back. What do we do? You'd expect Monreal to, probably Rob Holding comes back, Monreal back on the left. What do we do on that right? Do we play Bellerin or do we play Chamberlain, who's looked very, well, in the semi-final, he was fantastic. That's probably going to be the toughest decision he has to make here. I think he'll go Chamberlain, personally.
I think he should go Chamberlain. What do you think, Sophie?
Based on form and based on effectiveness and what that could mean on the counter. I mean, obviously we love Bellerin, but the truth is he's not played very well, has he? There's something about him in the last few games, and it's not the hair. It's
the ankle.
Exactly.
And the lack of confidence has come with it.
Confidence, but I think he's carrying an injury. Yeah.
And he's lethal with his pace. So if that ankle's niggly and he can't do that, he can't be effective there, you have to go with the Ox. And I think you go with the Ox just based on recent form. And that guy has put the team on his shoulders in some ways too. He's shown so much maturity and shown so much care. And I think he deserves to start. And I think he could have the same effect Theo has done in the odd North London derby, right? Especially like I love having British players in our team, and I love that translation of the players I think that have come into the club. They understand the importance of the North London derby. Having those British players at that core who just really get it, grew up with it, and understand what it means, and they help translate that to the foreign players that come in too. I think it's really, really important, and I think we've got a nice blend and mix of that. And I think you can have this could be a moment where the Ox solidifies his, people love him, but I think this could be a massive, massive game for him. I think this could be one of those games where people look back on in years to come, where everyone says, wow, that was the moment. That was the moment where, he really kind of everyone's had one of those moments in an Arsenal shirt that's been an effective play that we've loved and adored over the years. And I think he can have one of those moments in this game.
And he'll also play on Danny Rose's side, who obviously, if he does play, hasn't played much football. So suddenly you've got Danny Rose maybe thinking,
he doesn't like going backwards.
Well, exactly. And Oxlade-Chamberlain can take a man on and can beat a man. So that'd be interesting.
And also what I like about Chamberlain, especially, I mean, some people were a bit split about his performance at Borough, but I liked his performance against Borough because of his delivery. And from that we've seen it this season, Hull away, we've seen it at Manchester United away, we've seen it again and again on Sunday. His delivery from that right-hand side is absolutely phenomenal. And it's one thing that I do think that Bellerin needs to improve on, is his delivery from the right hand side. He's got the pace, it's dynamic going forward, but the crossing and getting that ball in is not as deadly as Ox has been recently.
He's made the decisions. He's definitely made the decisions with when he releases the ball. I think that has been one of the biggest criticisms of the Ox is you want him to pass it 3.2 seconds quicker than he does, and I think he's done a much better job on his shorter passes this season. And some of his longer, when he's busting down the flank and he whips one in, that has been much more improved from him this year. But it's his shorter passes, I think, where he's really improved and made better decisions on this season.
Sophie, staying with you, the midfield. Who's your midfield two? If we're playing this system, who's your midfield two and why? Yeah.
That's really tough one, isn't it? I mean, it's so important. This game's so massive. Okay, now you've got me feeling under pressure. I take back what I said before. Does Ramsey frustrate you guys?
He does. He does frustrate me, but I think he's the best. I think he's the best partner for Xhaka right now.
This game,
I agree.
Yeah.
This game, I think he's the one. I think that's the partnership. Ramsey loves having a little go at Spurs, doesn't he? And he gets it. He understands what is required in this game. And I agree. I think that would be that's who I'd go with. And I I also think that it will allow Xhaka to have more. You know, when I was watching Xhaka in Bundesliga, because I used to have to cover it for a couple networks here, I likened him to having a bit of an Alonso pass in him. He's got that sweeping pass, if you want, with his left foot, but his short passing as well is when he's on form, he can really expose and open up defense in a split second. That's what we haven't really seen from him at Arsenal as much as I would have liked. A lot of people are talking about him being a £35 million waste. He's actually a good player. Yeah. He's really got a great footballing brain. He makes some stupid decisions. And guys, I don't know what you think, but in this game, that's where I don't trust Xhaka. Can he hold his temperament? Because he can play, you know, and he can unlock that Tottenham defense that supposedly is one of the best in Europe right now in a heartbeat. But does he have the temperament in this game? That's the only thing that worries me. But if I'm partnering him up, it's got to be Ramsey, I think.
Axe, over to you. What we saw in the reverse fixture over at our places, Tottenham would come off the Champions League defeat. They'd switch to three at the back, and they took the initiative pretty early on. Moussa Dembele and I think it was Wanyama in that midfield, very strong combination. You know, Eriksen coming off the wide flanks. I mean, the chances are they're going to try and wrestle initiative again this Sunday. Is Xhaka, if you're going with Xhaka and Ramsey in there, how important is it for them to really be disciplined and not both be careering too far up forward? I mean, there were times on Sunday where I saw them, obviously when City scored their goal, case in point, we'd overcommitted. Can't afford to do that on Sunday. Moussa Dembele is one of the safest with the ball. He's technically brilliant. He's a great dribbler. I think he's one of the best dribblers in the Premier League from his position.
He's also
obviously
a doubt.
Got Kane.
He's also a doubt.
Is he a doubt?
Yeah, he might still make it, but he certainly is a doubt today. But
Kane's just come back, you know, and Eriksen's obviously, you know, I think he's quite underrated for the kind of player he is. I mean, but how important is it, I mean, to really make sure that we don't allow them the initiative, because a lot of their stuff starts from there.
I think you said about discipline. I think discipline for those midfield too is massive, and two types of discipline. The discipline, you know, to actually stay on your feet, stay on the pitch, but also that positionally kind of discipline as well, and that's key. And I think that's why when you talk about partners for Xhaka, I think you rule out Francis Coquelin in this sort of game because you just can't have two of them. You can't have two hotheads on. And then the other thing is then you have your left with sort of El Neni and Ramsey, and then you think, okay, well, in a game like this against Wanyama, potentially Dembele, you probably need some legs. Then you think, well, who's got the biggest engine in our midfield, and that's certainly Aaron Ramsey. I think Aaron Ramsey's starting he's starting to develop a partnership with Xhaka. I think he's, even if it only has been a few games, I think Wembley was a big point for all of them, and I think Ramsey would be the right player, and I think he's starting to learn that discipline. And I think with this sort of new formation, though, it does give him a license to sort of, you know, Arsene Wenger described it as a Frank Lampard type runs and that Frank Lampard type. And I think it gives him the license to do that, knowing that there's a little bit more insurance behind him. You still have to be disciplined, of course, but I think it does give him the license. I think in this sort of a midfield, it's all about releasing the ball quickly. That transition, I mentioned before that we were great with Santi Cazorla in, but that transition between defence and attack, I think that's key as well, because Tottenham will have the ball a lot. I think when we get it, we do need to kind of, you know, move it quickly. And I think that you sort of your midfield, then it links into who's going to play up front for you as well, because that then ultimately can decide how your midfield play. Because if it's Welbeck or if it's Giroud, if it's Sanchez, if it's Walcott, probably won't be the latter, but you know, if it's any of the other three, your game changes slightly. So I think a bit of it depends on that as well.
Sophie, over to you. Let's talk about our front players, and not only what they do in attack, but also what they do off the ball when we're not in possession. Obviously, we know that players like their two wing backs love bombing on forward, helping out the attack. How important is it? I mean, when we're selecting the front three here, obviously Ozil starts in the 3-10. then you've got the issue of who's starting up front and who's going to be playing the left-sided 3-10, free number 10, should I say? Who are your front three and why?
For me, I was loving Giroud coming off the bench. I think for us, speed's going to be important in this game versus height. And I think that Giroud had developed this knack almost earlier on in the season when he was dropped. He was coming off the bench and he was scoring, and there was a confidence that he was rebuilding within himself. I think we had seen a lack of confidence in him. I think he's been harshly judged. Again, a player that, if it wasn't for his goals, Montpellier would never have won Liga before he came to Arsenal. So I'm starting. I think Giroud has to start on the bench. I don't know about you guys, but I'd love to see Alexis play right down the middle in this particular game. I think he can cause problems, and I think that's where I see Xhaka being exceptionally effective. I think Alexis can make some incredible runs. He's going to add pressure. Spurs love to, so many teams these days love to. No, when was the last time you saw a goalkeeper actually kick a ball in a game without passing it to a back four and starting a play? The influence from Barcelona and Pep Guardiola's Barcelona is amazing in terms of how it's changed football over the years. So I think pace is going to be key. Sorry about that.
That's okay. But okay, so that leaves one position. Is that Welbeck or Walcott?
I would go with Welbeck in this game. For me, Theo started off crazy in the season. It was without question one of his best Arsenal seasons. I think that we've seen him start. He's gone off the boil a little bit over the last couple months. I think that he's a player that, again, can be effective in a North London derby. But there's something about Welbeck when he came on, even in the game against City. You were talking about the positions that he was taking up, Akil. And I think that what he does, he adds another dimension in terms of speed. But I also think that with Alexis taking defenders with him, he'll always take more than one defender with him. It opens up other positions for players with pace. And yes, Theo has pace, but I think Welbeck is a smarter footballer than Theo. And that's not a slight on Theo. I just love the way Welbeck plays, his enthusiasm. I think he takes up really good positions. I think he has a really good understanding when he's playing with a player like Alexis Sanchez. And right now, from a confidence point of view, there's something about Theo, body language just isn't right. So for me, I'd start Welbeck. And I think that Theo would be a great option off the bench. Again, Giroud and Theo, I think, can be impact players off the bench. I think Welbeck can be effective in the game right from the get-go right now in terms of how we're seeing the players with form and how they've played in the last couple of games.
Okay, let me just put this to you both. Giroud should start because he's a good defender. They've got a lot of big men, so set piece-wise, we're going up against the back three, we're going up against Wanyama, we're going up against Harry Kane. Giroud should start because he offers us more in defence. He's a focal point up front. In terms, I know he's been left out, isolated in the games where he has started up front, but he occupies them. He can occupy them up front if we get people around him. What's your response to that statement that he's a good defender of the ball, and we should start him up front because he can occupy defence and we can get people around him? Alex, I'll come to you then.
There's some logic behind it, I guess. But I think it's a slight. I know it's not your thinking; it's a kind of this hypothetical. But I think it's a little bit of a defensive mindset by playing it that way. The only way I could maybe see Giroud playing is if maybe Chamberlain plays. I think if Bellerin plays, then suddenly, to me, I don't really see it. If Chamberlain plays, then it's a little bit different because obviously his delivery into the box. But I think, an option off the bench in this case. I think pace is going to be key. That counter attack is going to be key. So, like Sophie said, I would go Alexis up front, Welbeck left, and Özil. I think you can that can interchange as well. Alexis and Welbeck can rotate a little bit. You know, when we're under the cosh a little bit, then you would want Welbeck on the left, or maybe it's not on the left, but the left number 10, because you know he can do a bit of work the other way, when maybe not under the cosh and got the ball a little bit more, which we will have spells in the game where we do keep the ball and we do look to create. Then maybe switch them over and let Alexis and Mesut kind of create and get Welbeck in behind them. So I think you can be a bit fluid there, but with Giroud, I just think maybe it's in this formation. I'm still yet to be convinced. I know sort of I can see that sort of logically, and you know he's a player that can hold it up and things like that. But I don't think I've seen enough in the semi-final really to kind of think, okay, that kind of will work. I'm just not sure. And with Walcott, I think the formation doesn't really help him. You know, when actually yesterday when we went to 4 and Gibbs went off, I actually said to someone that okay, now we'll see what Walcott does, and immediately he went wide and wanted that ball. He only stayed on the field about 7 minutes more before he was replaced by Olivier Giroud. But you know, that suit, you could tell even in those 7 minutes he may not have done anything, but he looked more comfortable. Whereas this, I just don't think he did.
I think you're right. I mean, if he's coming off the bench and we need to change the formation to a 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-2 or 4-1, he's definitely better coming off to suit that formation.
That's the thing. If Theo Walcott's coming on, you'd expect us to be chasing the game, which means we probably wouldn't change to a 4. There's a reason why he didn't come on at Wembley, because we didn't need to chase the game. So
exactly. All right, a bit of lightheartedness now. As I said at the beginning, Thierry Henry and Eddie King were asked which of the opposing team's players they would have in their team. I'm going to ask you both to be as objective as you possibly can. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Sophie, start with you.
Tough.
Which of the Tottenham players would you have in your Arsenal team this season? Just right now. Would there be any?
Gosh. Almost like I feel dirty just answering the question, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think there are 3. I tell you, I'll take Hugo Lloris. Yep. Okay. I think that as much as we criticize, someone like Giroud, in that 3-4-2-1, Giroud is going to slow us down completely. In the City game in the FA Cup, it worked brilliantly because, our tactics were a little sit back. And if we want to sit back against Spurs, this is the Premier League. We've got to win, right? So to just go back to that, I think Welbeck gives us that better opportunity to win. I think someone like Hugo Lloris in goal right now, when you look at Petr Cech, as much as I love him, he just so hesitated with that Aguero goal. By 3, again, that 3.2 second rule, as I call it, he should have kept coming towards the ball. He didn't. I'd take Hugo Lloris. I think actually Spurs should be a little bit worried if David De Gea goes to Real Madrid in the summer. I think from, Schmeichel to Lloris, I think those will be 2 candidates that they'd be looking at. I think he's a top quality goalkeeper. If you're talking about the best, it's him, Neuer. And, obviously someone like Joe Hart, they're talking about coming back, but I'd take him. I think Dembele is a really good player. He's a good footballer. And without him, Spurs, when he went out towards the end of last season with the suspension, and Dele Alli did too, they really showed their value to the team. And I think Dembele and Dele Alli are huge value players to Spurs. Dele Alli, I think, has proven that he can play. When players do it a couple of seasons in a row, they've got to do it a few more. But Kane and Dele Alli have shown that, they can play football, and they're very smart footballers. I'll give them that. They take up really good positions. Dele Alli, I think, has that fearlessness that he plays with. You don't really see that a lot with British players. There's something about him. I feel like he's got the confidence of someone like Frank Lampard did in the latter stages of his career. And Harry Kane, no matter what you say, is probably one of the, top 5 strikers in the world right now. his value to Spurs is massive. And he scores easy goals, but he scores complex goals.
Yeah, that one he scored the other day was a complex goal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a smart footballer, right? I know, we have a little bit of a stab at him, and that's just banter, right? But when it comes to football intelligence, Harry Kane's a really smart footballer. So for me, those would be the three players, with Dembele as well. I think Lloris, Dembele, Ali, and Kane, I think, are Spurs' best players. And Alderweireld, I can never pronounce his last name properly, is a really good defender, but I think somebody that needs to actually show a little bit more in the Premier League for a couple more seasons. But he's very, very good.
Axe.
Yeah, similar. I would maybe, with Ali, maybe a bit more, maybe another season. But maybe I'm just being biased 'cause I don't like the fella. I think with Harry Kane, we all know he was in an Arsenal shirt in the Invincible season, so we know where his loyalty started at least. So, if he was an Arsenal player, I think we certainly wouldn't say no. I think the centre back, what you said, Alderweireld, I think. Yeah, that would be, we've never quite had that partner for Koscielny, Koscielny Mertesacker worked for a while, Koscielny Mustafi worked earlier in the season, but we've never been convinced long term. So I think potentially the centre back, Hugo Lloris for sure. I think Petr Cech's a good keeper, but we are starting to see a dip in form, a dip in concentration, potentially physically as well. So Hugo Lloris would be sure. I think Danny Rose has had a great season. Would I take him? I'm not sure I would, but he would be pretty close. I think left back, we've seen Monreal really dip this season. I think actually, to be fair to him though, in the last couple of weeks, he's really brought it back.
Yeah.
But generally over the season, I think we've seen him dip a little bit, and Gibbs hasn't really got a go. So potentially Rose could have a shout. But yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I certainly agree with Dembele. Steel, power, physical, can pass. Probably maybe doesn't get enough goals, but I would certainly he would add something to most midfields. But yeah.
Okay, you guys can go and wash yourselves off now.
Yeah, I need to. Got mouthwash ready. A very strong one too.
Okay, so finally, as we always do, I'm going to have to ask you for your predictions. Ladies first, Sophie?
I fancy us. I haven't fancied us in a good few weeks, but there's something about this game. I just feel like going into it, the team feels together. You guys talked about that image after Alexis scored. We haven't seen that in a really long time. Confidence is so important in football. I mean, you saw us, our confidence was shot against Palace and West Brom. We beat a Pep Guardiola team in a semi-final at Wembley. Now, I'm not saying everything is perfect. We have so many things to fix. And I've got a list of players on my summer transfer list that I would love to see us bring in. But I really, Spurs have been on a really good run. But I fancy us in this game, and I fancy a 2-1 to Arsenal.
After tonight's this week's round of games, does it fill you with any more confidence going into Sunday? Do you think that we're on for winning, or are you still filled with a little bit of trepidation, a little bit of caution?
Head and heart moment here. Heart can agree with Sophie and say nick a 2-1. Head probably says a 1-1. I think there'll be a goal or two. I don't think there'll be as many goals as there would have been if we hadn't switched our formation, for example. I think we're a little bit more defensively sound. I think Spurs will still be a little bit nervous, regardless of what happens with Chelsea. It's Arsenal. They're always nervous when they play Arsenal. So I can see a 1-1, but my heart's telling me to put a fiver on 2-1. But don't tell Joey Barton I said that.
You know what, real quick, you guys, doesn't it feel like we usually always somehow finish on, above Spurs? We know that's not happening this year, but wouldn't it be typical fashion for that type of vibe to take a different type of twist? And in potentially the last North London derby at White Hart Lane, They're going for the league. We are able to, hurt them in a different way. And that's somehow, some way, that vibe that we managed to always create and have done so for the last 20 odd seasons, I think may take a different twist. And now we're the underdog, and that's a very different place to come from. And Arsenal have rarely been the underdog against Spurs, and boy, are we the underdog in this game. And I think there's something Wenger's going to relish about that. And if there's one game he understands how to get a result out of, it's the North London derby. So
what you're saying is, in our worst season and in their best season, we can stop them from winning the title, and also cherry on the cake, possibly win
the
a
FA
trophy.
Cup, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
would be typical.
that bit about the last North London derby at White Hart Lane, possibly they might stay on for another year, but let's act like it is. I mean, you're getting the two most successful teams in there. Tottenham have won 2 league titles at White Hart Lane. Arsenal have won 2 league titles at White Hart Lane. So you're seeing the two most successful teams at White Hart Lane battle it out in the last ever derby there. So it would be great to win. And I do think, I can so see that happening. I can so see us getting a result to kind of end the race for them, and then, beating Chelsea, and actually then suddenly, we get that end of season parade celebrating the FA Cup, even though they're finished, sort of above us. And then all we need is Jack Wilshere to come back on the last day to just give him the mic.
Yeah.
And that's game, set, match.
Indeed. That would be a lovely end to a terrible season. Okay, guys, I want to wrap it up here. I want to thank our special guest, Sophie, a.k.a. at Soccer Diva, for coming on. Thank you very much, Sophie, for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me, you guys. You guys know your stuff. You're really in tune with the team and tactics, and it's been really great listening to you, as well as sharing kind of my thoughts too. So I really appreciate you having me on. You guys are great. Thank you.
No worries. I mean, that's good. At least we
check in the post, yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, at least we sound like we know what we're talking about, because that's all. It's all about the delivery. I do a lot of public speaking. All about delivery.
Exactly. And you, my mate Axe, you're going up there tomorrow on Sunday, I take it, as always?
Of course. I love it. I absolutely love it. And just an advice, we had through the AST, we've been speaking to Tottenham and the Met Police, and they've all said, Arsenal fans, get in early. So anyone listening to this going to the game, their advice is get in early. They'll be serving beers before the game, but not at half time. So if you are in early, you can have a beer and stuff. Just get in early. Just
stay safe.
Just to avoid the trouble, if there is going to be any. Hopefully there won't be that.
Indeed. All right, so catch us again on all the platforms. Again, we shall be coming to you after the North London derby to review that one. This has been a Gooner Ramble. I've been your host, Giles. Up your Arsenal.
Up the Arsenal.
Football has its ups and downs. You can't win every match, but you can win every bet. Start your free trial and earn £30 risk-free today at oddswatchdog.co.uk.